Common Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23rd. Non-interpretation?
Yes, but it's so low.
Okay, le volume. Okay. Oui. Okay, milieu. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23rd, 2022. Members are attending in person and in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. C'est bon? Oui? Okay. I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating in video conference, click on the microphone, though nobody's at this time on video conference, so we should be okay there. Interpretation for those on Zoom, choice of French or floor. In accordance with the committee's routine motion concerning connection tests for witnesses, I'm informing the committee that all witnesses appearing virtually have completed the required test in advance of the meeting. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February 1st of 2022, the committee will resume its study on human trafficking of women and girls and gender diverse people. Before we welcome our witnesses, I would like to provide this trigger warning. This will be a very difficult study. We'll be discussing experiences related to abuse. This may be triggering to viewers, members, or staff with similar experiences. If you feel distressed or if you need help, please advise the clerk. I would now like to welcome our first panel here all in person for us. As an individual, we have Megan Walker, who's a women's advocate and retired executive director from the London Abused Women's Centre. From the Concertation de lutte contre l'exploitation sexuelle, we have Diane Matt, who is the co-founder. And from the Women's Centre for Social Justice, Crystal Snyder, lead project consultant. So I'll be providing you each 5 minutes for opening comments. When you see my arms going like this and wacky, that means you've got like 15 seconds. And when you see me going crazy, that means we should be over with. Okay, so I'm now going to pass it over to Megan. Megan, you have 5 minutes.
1990, and I have shared that work and best practices with Canadian and global organizations. I use the term women and girls in the sex industry to describe prostituted and trafficked women and girls. Women and girls in the sex industry have reported that prostitution and trafficking are difficult to separate. Even if a woman or girl starts out independently, she can be quickly picked up by a trafficker. Sex purchasers rarely care if a woman or girl is trafficked or underage. In fact, many of them will pay more to have sexual services with an underage girl. Over the last 25 years, I have seen a steady increase of women, and particularly girls, lured into the sex industry by traffickers or organized crime. Many girls are lured from universities, colleges, bars, and even workplaces. Parents have often reported checking online sites to see if sexual services of their daughters are being advertised. As painful as this is for parents, it is how they track whether their daughters are dead or alive. Without sharing too many details included in the content of the advertisements, I am aware that the level of violence women and girls in the sex trade experience by sex purchasers and traffickers include violent beatings, torture, strangulation activity, and forced engagement in fetish acts. London Police Service refers to London, Ontario as a trafficking hub because of its proximity to Highway 401, which allows easy movement between Detroit and Toronto. It is also because of easy access to hotels and motels just off the exit ramps into the city. Between 2014 and early 2021, under my leadership, the London Abused Women's Centre provided direct service to at least 2,888 women and girls who identified as being in the sex industry. I find that shocking. 68 girls reported they were underage, and of those girls, 15 reported that they were under the age of 15. Only 6 women of the 2,888 we helped reported entering the sex industry by choice. Exiting the sex industry is difficult. Women and girls are terrified of the threats they receive from their traffickers, including threats to kill them or members of their family. Access to detox and rehab facilities is difficult, and finding a job can be impossible if women have criminal records. Even if they can find a job, too few jobs provide a guaranteed living income. Affordable housing is almost non-existent, and social assistance is inadequate. Women and girls are forced to remain in the sex industry because they lack the supports necessary to move on in their lives. A three-pronged approach is critical to the work of preventing trafficking. The three prongs include providing robust funding to organizations that work with women who are trafficked and prostituted, public awareness and education, and legislation and enforcement. Women and girls in the sex industry need immediate access to well-resourced, fully informed services across this country, including access to safe houses. Core funding is essential. Grants and limited time funding prevent the necessary long-term work required to help victims of trafficking. Parents and children across Canada need consistent information through public awareness and education about trafficking, including the signs to look for, identifying coercion, internet safety, and tactics of luring. The Protection of Community and Exploited Persons Act provides police with important tools to help women and girls. Similar to the economics of supply and demand, it is the demand for prostitution that fuels the supply. Are you going like this? Okay. That fuels the supply of women needed. That supply is provided by traffickers. When demand is reduced, so too is supply. Reducing demand, however, requires police charge sex purchasers and the Crowns prosecute them. Failure of police across this country to enforce PSEPA and the failure of the Crowns to support enforcement has contributed to a growth in the commercial sex industry. Finally, I want to talk to you about the importance of expunging records. We know that, as I've said earlier, women and girls who have a criminal record have a difficult time finding work. Expunging the historically unjust convictions can help those women and girls move on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over to Diane Matt. Diane, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are on unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, and that the Indigenous women and girls have borne and continue to bear the brunt of trafficking for sexual exploitation in Canada. The Concertation des luttes contre l'exploitation is a feminist organization that works with female victims of sexual exploitation to provide alternatives to women seeking to exit prostitution. We've been in operation since 2005. We welcome and support more than 200 women annually. Most of the women attending our organization are between the ages of 24 and 35. 25% of them are women from ethnocultural minorities, and a vast majority live in extreme poverty. As such, poverty is both a factor of entry into prostitution and a barrier to exiting this environment. Therefore, reducing poverty among women should be one of the key areas in combating trafficking for sexual exploitation. If Canada had a guaranteed, viable minimum income, fewer women and girls would enter the sex industry, and they would be less likely to be victims of human trafficking. Today, we will focus on the issue of preventing trafficking for sexual exploitation and on support for women and girls who have been victims of this form of violence. We appreciate that this committee has decided to specifically focus on the issue of trafficking for sexual exploitation. This is a wise choice, and we'll come back to it later. Although Canada has legislation on human trafficking, 2005, and on criminalizing purchasing sexual acts, 2014, Canada continues to treat these two crimes as though they were distinct. This is a mistake, and certainly explains why our efforts to suppress this form of violence against women and girls are stagnating. we would like to propose 3 major changes to the government approach to suppress trafficking for sexual exploitation. First, as set out in the Palermo Protocol and as the United Nations General Assembly reiterated last December, governments must, and I quote, intensify their efforts to prevent and address with a view to eliminating the demand that fosters the trafficking of women and girls for all forms of exploitation, and in this regard to put in place or enhance preventative measures, including legislative and punitive measures to deter exploiters of trafficked persons, as well as ensure their accountability. So the main tool is working on demand. All the countries that have adopted a social legal model criminalizing the purchase of sexual acts have seen a significant decline in trafficking for sexual exploitation on their territory. Canada has similar legislation, PCPA, which criminalizes purchasing sexual acts in Canada. However, it is not properly implemented. There are many inconsistencies and seldom any prevention, i.e. messaging for those who purchase sexual acts, who are the root of the problem. Second, we know that a majority of women in the sex industry would like to exit. That's between 80 and 95% of women in the sex industry, but they do not have access to the assistance and support they need, including access to income, access to housing, access to status where necessary, access to education or work, and psychosocial support. The equality model, adopted by some countries such as Sweden, Iceland, Norway, France, and Ireland, together with legal and social tools to change the behaviors of those who use paid sex acts, provide more security and protection for women who are the victims. In France, for example, it is recommended that the Government of Canada work on a support program for women exiting prostitution. That would align with our 2 acts. Third, commercial sexual exploitation is the least spoken form of violence against women and girls. Trafficking for sexual exploitation is intimately tied to equality for all women.
Seconds over. We'll wrap it up, so hopefully we'll get more into those questions, okay?
Okay.
Thank you so much. We'll now move it over to Crystal Snyder. Crystal, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I first want to acknowledge that we're meeting on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. It's especially important for me to ground myself in acknowledging not just the land I'm occupying as a settler when doing anti-trafficking work, but to stand in solidarity with its First People, especially because of the overrepresentation of Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks who are overwhelmingly targeted for human trafficking. My name is Crystal Snyder, and I want to acknowledge my colleagues Nicole Taylor and Nneka McGregor, who co-authored this submission, as well as many survivors who have provided critical input. I'm a lead project consultant for a program called Embedding Resilience, Grounding Resistance, led by Women's Center for Social Justice, or better known as Women at the Center. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and speak and participate in this important study. As a survivor of domestic sex trafficking, the child welfare system, and the daughter of a mother who attended Ontario training schools, having the opportunity to speak about prevention and accountability is significant and impactful. Women at the Centre's anti-trafficking project, funded by the Department for Women and Gender Equality Canada, is a project led and developed by and for survivors of various forms of trafficking and exploitation. Through the project, we're conducting community-based participatory research with other survivors of trafficking, creating a national network of survivors of trafficking, and developing a national survivor strategy, as well as providing training for peer workers, media, hotel staff, healthcare, law enforcement, and frontline agencies. Women at the Centre wants to acknowledge the incredible work that has been done and is being done across what we now call Canada, and we're grateful for the many wonderful people who are working tirelessly to disrupt and eradicate trafficking nationwide. Since the project began, we amplified our engagements with survivors to document what is and isn't working, and what will lead to long-term sustainable change, including specific gaps related to the ongoing arrest and convictions of survivors of trafficking as traffickers, holding survivors accountable for other crimes committed while under the control of a trafficker, and the consistent overrepresentation of Black, Indigenous, and racialized women, girls, Two-Spirit, gender diverse, and trans individuals who are not only disproportionately trafficked, but also disproportionately charged and convicted of crimes related to their trafficking. One of our recommendations is that the United Nations non-punishment principle be adopted and embedded in trainings for law enforcement across the country for consistency and alignment with the rights of survivors. The non-punishment principle states that a survivor of trafficking cannot be held legally accountable for a crime committed while under a trafficker's control. Further to this, we recommend service agencies adopt the same framework and provide supports to survivors who have recruited others while under the direction of a trafficker. In addition, the laws related to sex work are again to be challenged in the Supreme Court in the near future. We want to caution against the conflation of sex work and sex trafficking. We acknowledge that there's a divide between sex workers, sex worker right advocates, and those impacted or trafficked in the industry. But we do want to shine light on the significant harm that has come against sex workers as a result of adopting the Nordic model, most notably the harm and mass deportation of migrant sex workers who do not identify as trafficked.
Oh, sorry. The translation went off. So, yeah, it's on again.
We encourage the federal government to create pathways for conversation between these divided groups, to uphold the right of sex workers by engaging organizations such as Butterfly, and to adopt a GBA, Gender-Based Analysis Plus, lens which includes impacts on sex workers when creating or amending legislation. Women at the Center states that the consistent use of victimization language, saviorism by individuals and organizations involved in anti-trafficking efforts, including law enforcement and service providers, is demeaning and a testament to just how helpless and broken the structures and systems think we might be. These systems and structures are meant to provide support and assistance to survivors of exploitation, and sometimes are the sites of further trauma and re-victimization. That fails to take into account the diverse needs of survivors, especially, as we stated above, for those who are what our board co-chair, Dr. Tepe Atafairkan, refers to as living on the margins of the margins. Black, Indigenous, women, girls, Two-Spirit, gender diverse, trans youth, living with disabilities, those with precarious status, etc. I'll wrap it up because I've got the thing, and hopefully we can get to the rest of this. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I really appreciate you watching that. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting a round. We'll be going around for 6 minutes for the first round. We'll be starting with Anna Roberts for the CPC. Anna, you've got 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here. I'm going to ask Ms. Walker a few questions. First of all, congratulations on helping more than 8,000 women and your work with Shine the Light. That is to be commended, so thank you for doing that. So my question is pertaining to Bill C-36 from 2014 that targets Johns who purchase sex and the pimps who profit from it, while also providing support for prostitutes who are looking to escape the sex work. So my question is, do you believe the implementation and enforcement of this bill is working?
I am very supportive of the bill. Unfortunately, because it's not being enforced, it's difficult to say how much it is working. We do know from the Jurastat that was released in 2021 that before and after studies do show that there has been an effective response, and that women and girls are able to leave more easily at this point, and also that fewer women and girls are being murdered. The other thing we know from that report is that there has been a slight decline in the number of men who are purchasing sexual services.
So do you have any stats that you could share with this committee?
I do, and I was going to leave this paper with you so that you would have it.
Okay, thank you. From your work, what differences do you see across the country in human trafficking and sexual exploitation?
Well, Ontario is one of the biggest hubs of both recruitment and transport. So we know that there is an increase of women and girls going through what they call the circuit in Ontario. It's very difficult once they're in to get out. The level of violence is absolutely off the charts. We see before and after pictures that family members provide us with of their daughters before that they were trafficked and then after, and they are unrecognizable and not the same women and girls. And I think the other thing to remember is that trafficking is not an individual concern. It's a concern that impacts all of society. Whenever there is trafficking or prostitution, there is an increase in organized crime, increase in guns and gangs, and increase in violence.
Is there any way you could share with us some of the data from your findings?
Yes, I can absolutely do that.
Can you give us some of that for the record, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, right now.
sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was
Sorry.
making a note to provide
Oh, no,
it.
no, yeah.
Yes, it's very complex, and I will absolutely provide that data. I just don't have that right in front of me now, and I don't want to make any errors in trying to recall it.
So you'll get that to us. We don't, because, yeah, if you could table it to the committee, we would appreciate it, because I
will.
think if we have numbers to go on, we're in a better position to tackle the issue,
Yeah.
as you've referred to it.
Yeah.
So the next question I have for you is, you have stated that, I quote, "I don't believe that there is any woman that would willingly expose herself today to pornography, which is very brutal. I want the government to indicate that there's no difference between trafficking, prostitution, and pornography. They're all one of the same." Can you share with the committee your thoughts on that, please?
Well, it's all about the exploitation of women and girls because they are women and girls. And so pornography is being used at this point to force women and girls to play out those acts with sex purchasers, as an example, or with their intimate partners. We have seen, fortunately, Pornhub close down because they were receiving so many complaints from women and girls who had no idea that they were being videotaped, and those tapes were being put on the site of Pornhub, which, as you can imagine, is devastating because once it's on the site, it's difficult to remove it. Pornhub did shut down, but now we see that some of the some individuals have come back, and it will be reopening again soon. So Pornhub, trafficking, prostitution are all, in my opinion, tactics of male violence against women and sexual exploitation. And that is not just because of me. That is what is reported to us on an ongoing basis when I was at London.
So sorry to
Business
interrupt, because I know I don't have a lot
Yeah.
of time left, but you said Pornhub has been shut down?
It
I
was
don't think it has.
Well, it was temporarily shut down. There are a lot of efforts done by a woman in California and indicated that Pornhub was taken off, but it will be right back.
Okay, because I believe
You know
that
if that's,
I
is it
believe that
still?
it's-
Right back.
It's right back now.
it is
Yeah.
back. So it's
Yeah.
not.
No.
It's been sold to someone else.
Yeah, it's being sold. That's it.
Okay, so am I? Okay, so femicide is a very important issue in the work that you do. What is the link between femicide and trafficking?
Well, femicide is also about the killing of women because they are women. And so for me, I say that trafficking is about exploiting women and girls because they are women and girls. And we also know that there are a number of women and girls who are killed by their traffickers
Right.
or sex purchasers. And
So-
we've seen that. So there is a link.
So I did some research
Yeah.
recently, and I found out that the jail time for human traffickers is much less. So they get, they could go in for 2 years or less. Sorry, but where if they had committed a different crime, it would be a greater sentence. Do you agree that they should be serving that the sentencing has to be reviewed so that it meets the crime? Like, I don't think they're getting enough time in jail.
About 5 seconds to respond, sorry.
So I totally agree with that. And what is important to recognize is that in almost all crimes against women, the sentencing of the perpetrators is much less than it would be if it were a man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're now going to move over to Mark Saray. Mark, 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for the work that you do every day. In our study, we're looking at human trafficking. My questions have to do with support for victims and how to empower women. My first question will be for Ms. Snyder. You talked about GBA Plus earlier. Can you tell us more about how the government can use this to enhance legislation? How is that linked to funding from the Department of Women and Gender Equality?
GBA Plus is a government initiative about looking at policies, procedures, and processes through an intersectional lens. And when it came to the laws in 2016 or 2014 when they were rewritten, I don't think that lens was adopted, and I think that we could do better. I think that the lens of sex workers, and then further to that, sex workers who are trans, sex workers who are of color, sex workers with disabilities, they're all impacted by this legislation differently. And so my recommendation, Women at the Center's recommendation, is that you adopt your own method of applying policy, but consider that specific impact when reviewing that legislation.
OK. Merci, Madame.
Thank you. Ms. Matt, earlier you talked about support for Indigenous women. This is a significant issue in Canada. Earlier you talked about recommendations to enhance legislation. Do you have any examples that you can give us for legislation for protecting Indigenous women? Thank you for the question. In 2016, France created a similar legislation that we had in 2014 that criminalizes the purchasing of sexual acts, and in 2016 they created a support program for women seeking to exit prostitution. I would invite you to examine the France model because it gives women a time frame, 2 or 3 years. They have access to housing, they have access to support, and it allows them to exit prostitution. It's the same for human trafficking. It's much easier to be brought into it than it is to exit it. And so they need the means to be able to support themselves when they're trying to leave. But I would like to also take a moment for GBA Plus. I think that it would be a problem. GBA Plus is based on systems of oppression and discrimination in Canada. And if we truly want to examine legislation with a GBA Plus lens, we'll be starting with the principle, specifically for human trafficking or exploitation. These are caused by social inequalities and economic inequalities that disproportionately impact women. And we have to look at all women. Being in the sex industry can be a personal decision. We have met many women who did not have the choice, but it is these issues that led them into that environment, because human trafficking for sexual exploitation, well, that's an act of dominance. And if we don't think of the equality between men and women, well, then we're missing the point. That's why I mentioned the importance, and I'll add my third recommendation here, but I think that we need to, because prevention and criminalization of human trafficking can not only be linked with public safety, it's a societal choice that needs to be made, and we also need to look at equality between men and women. One of our recommendations is to have a Canadian national action plan on sexual exploitation, and it would be an additional tool to help on prevention and to help support women. Thank you, that's great. I have only 30 seconds left.
Thank you for the years that you've been working and supporting victims and empowering them. And you mentioned in your recommendations like core funding, public awareness, and then legislation. Can you expand for the federal government here on what you mean by legislation to improve the legislation or new legislation to the committee, please?
So, first of all, it's important to note that women and girls are immune from prosecution under PSEPA. It's very important, except there is one clause in PSEPA that does criminalize women if they are prostituting themselves in specific areas, and we do not support that. We would ask that that be removed. I also think there needs to be better legislation I'm sorry.
Yeah, good, okay.
Provide that clause too to the committee?
Yeah, would you? Yeah,
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. Fantastic. We're now going to pass it over for the next 6 minutes to, I'm saying wrong words now, to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being with us today. And we're seeing what causes women to end up in this environment. And 96% of victims are women. We can see how disproportionate things are and how this is a feminist issue. I'll start with you, Ms. Matt. In your recommendations, you talked a lot about legislation and criminal law. But we also need to talk about the implementation of the National Action Plan. There was one in 2017 and one in 2012. So there is an action plan on human trafficking, but we're seeing that the numbers are continuing to increase. Can you explain in detail how we could focus on the current action plan and how that could change things with regards to human trafficking? To my knowledge, there is nothing in the action plan that focuses on demand. And again, if we really want to focus on fighting human trafficking, we need to focus on the main causes. So, focusing on demand should be a part of a national action plan. And to my knowledge, it's not in the current action plan. And because it falls under public safety, there's more focus on the criminal or legal aspect or policing. Whereas if we had an increased role by women in gender equality, that would be good. They would have interesting programs, but for research and understanding the phenomenon, we have to examine equality between men and women and equality for human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Focusing on demand is very important. As a society, and I agree with you, 96% of women, or of the human trafficking victims, 96% of them are women, and this should be concerning and shocking, and we should be wanting to find out why. Why are they being put into that environment? And that's why we have legislation from 2014 about commodifying women and girls. Often we think that there's two extremes, those who are for sex work and those who are against prostitution. But the United Nations and other organizations have stated that in order to counter human trafficking for sexual exploitation, we need to focus on demand. They're not very radical groups. There are international tools that say that focusing on demand is at the heart of getting results for the fight against human trafficking. It is indeed quite interesting to see that issue. And you mentioned public safety, and you also talked about the Department of Women and Gender Equality. We have to work upstream, downstream, and during. There needs to be education in supporting women. We need to be able to detect victims as well. But a lot of these crimes are happening in Canada. So how can we find these victims so that we can support them? And we also want to, of course, work on prevention. I would like to come back to the different levels of government, because in order to support women, and in Quebec there are social services, and how do we, at the federal level, need to examine the capacity at the different levels of government? For example, housing, that could be examined at the municipal level. So how could the different levels of government work together? Microphone, please. We need to examine the causes of the issue, but we also need to see who can do what. And I think that we should look to Quebec. When I talk about the program for supporting women exiting prostitution, there was a group that examined minors exiting prostitution, and they examined support programs that helped people directly. Funding for organizations like ours is important, but there needs to be programs as well that are given directly to women. There needs to be a harmonization within all the levels of government, because we're talking about detecting victims, but in Montreal there are massage parlors, and a lot of women are impacted by sex trafficking and nothing's happening.
So we'll get back to that. Leah, you've got 6 minutes.
Thank you. Just a very quick question, yes or no answer from all the witnesses. So I introduced a bill, Bill C-223, to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income. You know, whether you support the rights of sex workers or not, I think we can all agree that a guaranteed livable basic income, in addition to affordable, accessible housing with rent geared to income, would help wherever you stand with this situation. So yes or no, would a guaranteed livable basic income be a foundational piece to address this?
Yes, it's an important part of the puzzle.
Thank you. Diane? Yes? Perfect. Double yes. Double yes. Okay.
Yes, I think it would be a cornerstone in prevention.
Okay, excellent. I ask that because I find often, you know, in the House of Commons, wherever we stand on sex work, depending on which party you're in, you either support really tangible things for prevention or protection. So I'm going to continue pushing that, particularly to end any form of gender-based violence. My next question is for Madame Snyder. Okay. Like you submitted a brief. I want to speak specifically to the legislation everybody's talking about today. And this came from the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform. And it's an alliance of 25 sex worker rights groups across the country, led predominantly by and for sex workers. I believe decisions, nothing about us without us. And along with several individual applicants, they filed a constitutional challenge against the PCEPA in 2021, arguing the law, in quotes, violates sex workers' constitutional rights to security, personal autonomy, life, liberty, free expression, free association and equality. In terms of your brief, you said, in addition, as the laws related to sex work are again to be challenged in the Supreme Court in the near future, we want to caution against the conflation of sex work and sex trafficking. We acknowledge the divide, as you indicated, between sex workers and sex workers' rights advocates and those impacted or trafficked in the industry. I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit on that point.
I think that this has been a long-standing conversation, as it should be, and my point there is that you can support and work to end human trafficking while also protecting the rights of those who are engaged in the sex industry by choice. And I think that is what I was getting to at that point.
Thank you. And I know, Madame Walker, you spoke to the need to amend the bill to take out the criminalization of those in sex work. Is that right?
No.
You believe we should still criminalize sex workers? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand.
Women in the commercial sex industry are not generally charged or criminalized. They are immune from prosecution. It is the demand for service, the men, that are criminalized. And so there is a section in the legislation, however, that does criminalize, may criminalize women if they are prostituting themselves in areas close to schools and things like that. That's what I would like to remove.
Okay, so, I mean, I have concerns about that,
Excusez-moi, est-ce qu'on peut mettre une pause au temps de Madame Lee? Je ne sais pas ce qui se passe avec la traduction, mais...
Microphone, please. We're hearing a lot of issues with microphones not being turned on or off, and they aren't able to hear.
So there is a problem. So if we're not using our microphones, we just have to make sure that we take them off and on. So if all members and all witnesses, if we could just pay attention to that. Thank you so much.
do I get an extra 3 minutes now,
3?
Madam Chair?
You
Just
know,
kidding.
I love the...
Just trying to be fair.
Leah, I'll give you as much. We'll work all we can, okay?
Okay.
We'll make sure there's fairness. So is everybody okay right now? Does everybody have... Everything's working? Okay. Floor back to you, Leah, and we'll get going.
Yes, getting back to Madame Snyder, I asked that question because you mentioned the butterfly. What is it? Butterfly? Pardon?
Butterfly Toronto, they're for migrants.
Oh, you have to put on your mic. Is your mic on?
Yeah.
Oh, it was? Okay, Butterfly Toronto. And one of the things that they said, and I actually quoted them in the last committee, was they spoke about how the way the system's currently set up places migrant sex workers particularly who are not being trafficked at risk, because even if something happens, they're scared to report because they're afraid of being deported. You know, we had the IRCC in the other day. And you, in your report, cautioned against harm and mass deportation of migrant sex workers who do not identify as survivors of trafficking as a way to protect women from predators. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, I also I want to speak to as well to, the statement that in the laws it's suggested that women shouldn't be charged or are not charged in trafficking. Women are charged every day for crimes related to trafficking. And so that's a great example of how that legislation is used to disproportionately impact, criminalize, or deport folks. Women are charged constantly for related charges and trafficking others while under the direction of their trafficker, despite what the law currently says.
So you mentioned...
Okay, so I had stopped your time. You have 1 second. So during the point of order, I had stopped everything. So anyway, what we're going to do is sorry, Leah, we're going to be going around. We'll be starting our second round. We only have, though, 8 minutes left. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going to Dominique, then over to Sonia, and then 2 minutes and 2 minutes. Go ahead, Dominique, for
Merci
about
beaucoup, Madame la
5.
Présidente. J'ai mis mon masque.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had my mask on because I have a bit of a cold. But thank you to the witnesses for being with us. Miss Matt, can you make the distinction between prostitution, men and women who choose it, and human trafficking. I get the impression that we're mixing these concepts. When does it become trafficking? Is it because somebody is managing the money? How can we understand the distinction? Answer: it's not a simple question. I think we're too used to looking at prostitution and trafficking with a legal lens. Because when we look at what it means for women, what prostitution means, it doesn't matter whether we call it trafficking or not. The Palermo case wanted to clarify that if somebody has the documents and creates the conditions in which people become slaves or entrapped, so it's trafficking then. But for me, the fact of being brought into prostitution, regardless of what happened, we have enough information to know that prostitution itself has a significant impact on women, and trafficking adds another level to the violence that they can be victims of. Does it have to include the movement of these people? Not necessarily. Certainly not from one border to another, because in Canada we have mostly domestic trafficking, so from one city to another. But the danger currently, especially with the case in Ontario and wanting to decriminalize prostitution in Canada, well, we're talking about forced prostitution and trafficking, and prostitution that is absolutely fine and would make women happy, when in fact that's false. I've seen millions or thousands of women, and we speak with women throughout the world. And the existence of an industry that would be good for women, that could be legislated and that we could protect them. If we were to go to any country where prostitution exists, well, especially where it was legalized or decriminalized, for example, in New Zealand, well, it means that there are more Indigenous women in prostitution. There are more children that are brought into the sex industry. Apologies, I have very little time. So I'll come back to what you were saying earlier on massage parlors. My question is, there are massage parlors, there are motels, there are hotels. A colleague mentioned the 401 highway. There are a lot of places, a lot of people who are seeing things happen in their establishments, on highways, in their hallways. How is it that we're not able to detect things more? And how does the police act? Are they making this a priority? In Montreal, we had examined the sex industry, and we had identified 270 massage parlors in Montreal and the neighboring cities. So we're talking about thousands of women in these massage parlors, and the police can't do anything because they can only act if there's a complaint. The sex industry is being presented as an industry like another. To create a massage parlor, I only need a license for personal care, same as a hairdresser or a massage therapist. I can get a permit for that. And this brings us back to what Ms. Larouche said in the different levels of government, because municipal rules for obtaining licenses do not examine what happens inside the establishment, and the police won't look into it either if there are no complaints. So there needs to be more done, Ms. Matt? How much time do I have left? Inaudible.
Pass it over to Sonia Sidhu, who is online. She'll be asking the questions online. So Sonia, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all the witnesses for joining us, for sharing your insight, especially lived experience on this difficult topic. My question will be directed to Ms. Schneider. So, Ms. Schneider, on the weekend, I attended an event with the Embrave from PILA local agency working to provide support to survivors and their families. They have a hotline, shelter, and peer-to-peer support. Do you believe this wraparound approach is effective?
Look at the national strategy, that was a significant gap, was the leveraging of lived experience and the funding of peer type projects and peer agencies. And I think, you spoke to the family, and that was another piece that was significantly missed in the national strategy was family reunification, family strengthening. It can be very difficult to traffic somebody who is well connected to others and to themselves. And so, I do believe that's an effective strategy.
And I know you are doing a lot of good work with the data. How can we improve data collection for human trafficking across the country?
I definitely don't feel equipped to answer that, other than to say, having conversations at this national level. So I did hear that there was a national table that was meeting to end human trafficking. First I heard of it was watching one of these videos. So I do wonder just about expanding those national tables and incorporating, and not just incorporating, but making it necessary that folks with lived experience are sitting there. But not only are they sitting there, getting paid for their time and not being re-exploited to help kind of bring those things to fruition.
And we heard that all levels need to be work on the same on a matter of care. How can we make sure that all partners are using a consistent approach or consistent response?
Yeah, so I think, creating those national guidelines, I saw there was a call for them some time ago. I don't believe anybody was awarded that call for national guidelines that set a standard for human trafficking identification and awareness for frontline workers and beyond in Canada. So maybe revisiting that, and then, again, that being more of a collective approach rather than one agency holding it.
Thank you. And we know that technology and online exploitation for human trafficking is a big component in this issue. In your view, how can we combat human trafficking in online spaces?
I think that there is some significant accountability for social media platforms that needs to be addressed and possibly legislated. I think youth, the youth know, yes, youth need to be made aware, but youth need to lead these initiatives as well in terms of awareness online and gaps that they see. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's the first person I ask about different privacy things on apps and how to navigate different trends that are coming up. So I really think centering youth in those initiatives is important as well for prevention.
And you spoke about having survivor at the table when engaging with the survivors. Can you comment on the importance of trauma-informed care?
Yeah, so I'm speaking to meaningful engagement with survivors. I think, survivor-led initiatives are important, and we're certainly hearing more about them. But I think there needs to be not just trauma-informed spaces, but survivor-informed spaces, meaning there are multiple nuances that need to be considered when inviting survivors to the table, and we have to be very aware on how we might re-exploit survivors when we engage them and how to mitigate those risks, but also having more than one survivor. I cannot speak for all survivors across the country. I am a white, cis, straight woman. My experience is very different than other survivors, so needing a variety of folks to come forward about their own experiences in a way that is meaningful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do I have more time?
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. Any other comment you want? Last comment on that?
No, it'll come later after I'm all done here.
Could I just update you on two items you raised? One is around how do we collect data, and the human trafficking hotline in Toronto, which acts for the entire country, is actually doing data collection, which is very valuable. And secondly, I just wanted to, Yeah.
Excusez-moi, Madame la Présidente. Problème de travail.
Apologies, Madam Chair. There are microphones turning on, turning off. Interpreters can't work.
Exactly. So the time was up for that one. So just before we continue, I'll let you know what's going on. The interpreters have asked to reboot. That will take us 5 minutes if we do so. We've got 3 minutes left to this panel. So there's a few things. I have 4 minutes left of
Oui, moi
questions.
j'ai 2 minutes, oui.
Oui, oui.
Yes, I have 2 minutes.
You have 2 minutes. Leah has 2 minutes. The issue here is that the next section we also will be rebooting on because we'll be going into in-camera. I am going to ask if we can personally be responsible. I recognize the translators need to be able to do their jobs, but I'm asking that if we all can be responsible for the microphones around us to ensure that we get the work of the committee done over top of having to reboot it so that we can work and do both at the same time. So if we can all watch these, Mark, you're in charge of all of those 5. So you're in charge of that, okay? We're going to all work together. If you see a red light and no one's speaking, please tap it, okay? I'm going to pass it over here now to Adrian. Adrian, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead, Adrian.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our 3 witnesses for being with us today. For my 2 minutes, Ms. Walker and Ms. Schneider, you both mentioned it. During the pandemic, the matter of human trafficking changed its face, and it also moved into the online sphere. Ms. Schneider, you mentioned it, and Ms. Walker, can you tell us more about acting and countering cybercrime and cyber violence, and how we could have a legislation so that we could better control what happens in that space? Because as we've seen during the pandemic, things move to the virtual realm.
So absolutely, it is trafficking. Traffickers will recruit from wherever they can, whether it's online, on the streets, at a bar, at a restaurant, whatever it is. So, of course, online is a major hub for luring, but more importantly, it's a major hub for exploitation. So many girls, particularly who are underage, are groomed on social media to believe that the person who's talking to them is a friend and would like to have a relationship with them. In many occasions like that, she's forced to touch herself, take off her clothes, or things like that. Those are, and this is the link to Pornhub or pornography, because often whatever she is doing is then transferred and uploaded onto Pornhub and other porn sites. So how do we stop it? This is a really complex issue, trafficking, and at the core of it, it involves primarily women. And women do not have equal rights in this country. And women need rights, and we need to name what the problem is that is impacting women, in this case, trafficking. In other cases, it's male violence against women in domestic relationships.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry, I just didn't have my arms going enough,
Sorry.
Megan.
No,
It's all good.
I thought it was a windmill.
Well, that's sometimes the... Are you saying I let off a lot of hot air there,
no,
Megan?
no,
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to move it on to the... Zanlia.
So I'll be blunt here. I'm all into keeping people alive and harm reduction. And so I just want to point to the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Call for Justice 9/11, which calls upon police services to develop and implement guidelines for the sex industry in consultation with sex workers in a synopsis. And 4.3, we call on the government to support programs and services for Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA people in the sex industry to promote their safety and security, and then it goes on. I say that because I find that a lot of the laws that are being put in place and even some of the interventions are without sex workers and or people involved in the industry, and what it's causing is actually women, girls, and diverse gendered folks to be unsafe. Could you expand on that, please, Madame Schneider?
Yeah, I think to that point of having representation from the people that are impacted is so important. One very unique area that we're not talking about today are rural communities, and Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks are in lots of rural communities. The issues are nuanced and they're layered, and policing relationships with community are quite strained. And so how are we expected to build relationship and to address an issue when a lot of the violence is coming from the people enforcing the laws onto the people that are supposed to be protected?
Yeah, and I would add to that, and I brought it up in other committees, that there's been several reports, in fact, of RCMP engaged in sex trafficking, for example, or violence against Indigenous women. Is that what you've witnessed in your research?
Yeah, and I think what can be difficult is to ask survivors to come forward to police when we know that a lot of times police are purchasing, and that's not exclusive to police, it's not only police that purchase, but that it is connected and it's hard to come forward.
Crystal, thank you so much. I would really, on behalf of the Status of Women Committee, I'd like to thank Crystal, Diane, and Megan for coming here and providing us your insights. We'll be now switching up, so we're going to suspend for about a minute because, as I said, the next hour is actually 45 minutes. So we're going to suspend and just stay tuned. Okay? Are they coming online then? One person. Very tight, so if I could just ask everybody to bring it down. We're reconvening this meeting, and I'd like to welcome online. Here, one moment. I would like to welcome online and in the room. In the room, we have sex workers of Winnipeg Action Coalition. We have. Is everybody? Shh. We have Kate Sinclair from the Winnipeg Action Coalition, and online from the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform, Jen Clayman, who is the national coordinator. So I'm just going to let everybody know we are still having some computer issues. So this is where I need everybody to play along. If yours goes on and you're not speaking, make sure you turn it off. If there's one close to you, if not, we'll have to restart the whole system, but I'm just trying to save us all time. I'm going to pass the floor now on over to Kate Sinclair, or actually, I'm sorry, Kate, to Jen Clayman online for her opening 5 minutes. Once again, please everybody watch your mics, okay?
Thank you. Our member groups across the country represent the experiences of thousands of sex workers who sell or trade sexual services. Our members have extensive personal expertise in mitigating interpersonal and state violence and labor exploitation. They also have experiences of impacts of anti-trafficking initiatives. Human trafficking is a loaded term used in this committee and elsewhere to describe everything from intimate partner violence to sex work to labor exploitation. Experience threats of detention and deportation that push them into precarious working conditions, increase vulnerabilities to labor exploitation, and deter them from seeking supports. Police pair up with Canadian Border Services agencies to surveil indoor workspaces where migrant racialized sex workers labor, and they use criminal laws, IRPR provisions that prohibit sex work, and municipal bylaws in so-called protective anti-trafficking efforts. Anti-trafficking initiatives that are underpinned by racist and anti-migrant ideology. Racialized communities are characterized as supposed organized crime rings. At last week's session, one MP asked how many, quote, foreign perpetrators are coming abroad illegally. She recognized there is no data to back this up. Black sex workers experience their share of racism. They are overrepresented in street checks and experience over-policing and under-protection on a regular basis. Removing laws that criminalize the lives of marginalized sex workers who are currently criminalized, regardless of the lies you were just told, will not increase violence, and it most definitely will reduce it. Anti-trafficking enforcement is a source of harm for all sex workers. It causes antagonism, a lack of trust, causes violence by police and by others, and it causes people to lose mobility, lose opportunity, and lose access. We have some concrete solutions for you. You need to start with law reform. 1, remove criminal, immigration, and municipal laws and regulations. Repeal PCPA, the sex work laws. As long as any part of sex work is criminalized, sex workers are unlikely to report. Remove the bylaws that allow entry into predominantly migrant sex work spaces. Repeal the IRPR regulations that prohibit sex work. CBSA needs to stop, quote unquote, visiting massage parlors and expunge sex workers' records for sex work convictions that impede on economic and physical mobility. 2, immediately ensure full and permanent immigration status for all in Canada without exception and provide everybody with access without fear services. 3, reframe funding and policy initiatives so that they're not dependent on anti-human trafficking frameworks. Anti-trafficking services, including most victim funds, are a barrier to sex workers getting support. They require sex workers to identify as victims of human trafficking or to exit sex work. In this vein, you need to recognize sex workers' work in policy and practice, and that means investing in addressing labor exploitation and improving working conditions for sex workers. 4, invest money in sex worker-led community initiatives. Indigenous sex worker groups, migrant sex worker groups, Black sex worker groups, they all exist. Groups you heard from this morning, barring Crystal, literally dictate and define women's experiences for them. We need non-judgmental programs that don't seek to minimize opportunities for sex work or that seek to abolish or conflate sex work with trafficking. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We're now going to pass it to Kate Sinclair, who's in the room. Kate, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Kate Sinclair. I am currently studying law here in Ottawa, and I'm a member of the Sex Workers of Going ahead. SWAC is a group of sex workers, activists, allies, and researchers based back in my home of Winnipeg, Manitoba on Treaty 1 territory, and was founded in 2014. We do have a clear mission to fight exploitation, not sex workers. We can't keep trying to end abuse by criminalizing and surveilling sex workers. These laws and policies often place the blame for trafficking directly on sex workers themselves, creating a simultaneous victim and abuser identity that is impossible to navigate. It encourages law enforcement to drop in on sex workers with quote-unquote wellness checks and empowers raids, arrests, deportation, and other forms of state violence. So a story that might help you understand this comes from my own life working in queer adult film. I was contacted out of the blue by a sex worker I had never met. She was trying to double check that she was going to have an audition with my company. This was the first that I'd heard of it because I don't hold auditions. As it turns out, someone was using my reputation and status as a sex workers to a rural address. He was stealing my name to get free sex, which is abuse. But he knows that the systems that criminalize sex workers and their clients actually benefit him. And he was right. We realized we couldn't come forward to report this man to police. The worker was rightfully, and from experience, more concerned about being arrested herself, losing her income, and losing her kids. Why? Because of laws and attitudes that cast that for sex workers as both traffickers and trafficked, victim and abuser. So we had his address, and we could not come forward. So we did what we could to keep people in the area safe. We posted warnings online, we reached out to local sex worker groups, we tried our best to keep others from accepting his pitch. But keep in mind that policing the internet and physical spaces to keep sex work invisible and as far away from community as possible means that warnings can only go so far. And that's only gotten worse in recent years with anti-trafficking legislation in digital spheres. So if we want to address harm, we need to step back and look at the circumstances that Canada has put in place to put people there. Oppressive immigration systems, criminalization of sex work, poverty, access to housing, a race to the bottom, minimum wages, poor support for those living with disabilities, and police surveillance of marginalized. Going forward, think of support, not a system that already is hostile to women, girls, and gender diverse folks. Don't think of patronizing deportation and incarceration will save you attitudes. Sex workers have been supporting our communities while criminalized for a long time. Keep us at your discussion tables. Fund sex worker-led programs and listen when we speak. Start with an end to sex work, to laws against sex work, immigration status for migrant sex workers, affordable housing, guaranteed basic livable income. We have laws around trafficking. We have the laws. If they aren't working or being used, we need to analyze why, not make new laws that will just uphold the status quo. I'll wrap up with another story from an Indigenous prairie sex worker, in their words specifically. They say, when I was a youth, I was houseless and participated in survival street sex work. Having been a sex worker is something I've always been open about in my writing, activism, and scholarship. I'm not ashamed because I am describing a common experience for Indigenous prairie youth. Anti-sex work rhetoric is anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, whorephobic, trans-misogynist, and classist, no matter how you try to dress it up in the aesthetics of resistance and decoloniality. To circulate anti-sex work rhetoric is to have Indigenous blood on your hands. The violent force that pushed me into sex work was Canada and Canadians. So we as SWAC remind you to fight exploitation, not sex workers. Together we can make a safer world for everyone. So thank you very much, and I do welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for both of your opening statements. We're now going to start our first round. Just to let you know, today we'll be stopping at 1:45 because we do have business that we need to get into. So we'll tight at 12:45. Michelle, I'm passing it over to you for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I'd like to start, if I could. I'm actually going to ask both of you, ladies, if you're okay to answer this question. What do you think the government is not delivering on that they said they would deliver on that would help improve and reduce human trafficking in our country? So not improve human trafficking, reduce it, improve, you know what I'm trying to say there. Thank you. I'll start with you, Kate, because I can see you, yeah.
Yeah, that works. I think there have been promises to work on decriminalization of sex work. There have been promises to kind of offer safe spaces for migrant workers, and we haven't seen any of that. We instead saw a consultation with the Justice Committee around the current sex work laws, PASEPA, that really just maintained the status quo. It just said, okay, we're going to listen to these anti-trafficking groups instead of listening to sex workers. Like, we've shown up at these panels many times, and for some reason we just keep getting brushed aside, like kind of like a tick box to have at the committees, and then just not take our recommendations, which has been really frustrating. So I think that immediate work can be taken to decriminalize sex work as a starting point. And I think I can toss to Jen for the any additional comments there. I think she may have more to say.
Thanks, Kate. I think that you did a great job of answering that. I appreciate it. The government has most definitely, all of the governments, I think that there used to be an idea that only the Conservative government was heavy leaning into enforcing law and putting money into law enforcement. But now we have all the government sort of leaning on law enforcement as a solution to almost every social problem that exists. So I think, and you've been told time and time and time and time again, not just by me and Kate this morning, but by people in various communities, including at the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Committee, that law enforcement is actually not reducing violence of any kind. And I really think that needs to be taken seriously, and that less money needs to be poured into law enforcement. Again,
sorry, can I just interject and question you on something there, Ms. Clayman, if I can?
Yeah.
So do you not think that enforcing bail reform for people who are committing crimes should not be enforced then? I understand the aspect of victims and survivors, but what I just heard you say, it sounds like you're saying we shouldn't be putting criminals behind bars.
I definitely didn't say don't use the
Okay.
criminal law under any conditions. I most definitely didn't say that. I said that there's too much money being poured into this notion of human trafficking, and there's no supports for people who are actually experiencing violence. That's what I'm trying to say. But also what I've been seeing is in human trafficking initiatives and policies and discussions, because there have been many over the years, is that more money just keeps going into law enforcement and very little money actually goes back into communities to actually address the violence that people are experiencing. One of the other things that this government actually has been recommended on many occasions, including at the last Justice Committee review of the sex work laws, was the removal of the provisions within the immigrant and refugee protections regulations that make it illegal for people to work in the sex industry. And that is demonstrated in statistics and reports that I'm happy to send you about what those harms are for creating that barrier. So there's a lot of pieces of law reform that this government isn't doing. And as I said in my talk, I think that's where you need to start.
I appreciate that. Thanks for clarifying. I just was just making sure I understood correctly.
I most definitely
Yeah.
wouldn't say not to,
Okay.
for violence that people are experiencing. I'm saying not to add additional laws to that, or not to actually just lean in on these, on laws that actually are not helping the problem, not helping the situation, like the sex work laws, for example. Those are most definitely not reducing violence against women, and are most definitely increasing violence against women. So I would repeal those laws.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying. I guess one of the things that's been really shocking in having some of the bureaucrats testify in this committee when we're investigating and trying to help those who are victims and survivors of human trafficking is the lack of data. And it's shocking to me, right? But Ms. Sinclair, you talked a lot about this, because a lot of the survivors can't or don't want to, it's and we've heard about this as well, it's very hard to have testimony or to put someone behind bars or to stop something, because it's very hard for the survivor to come forward, and we don't want to re-victimize, we don't want to re-traumatize. What do you suggest as solutions in terms of that in order to get the data that we need? Because these numbers that we're seeing are false.
Yeah, it's really important to note that the data is false, because as mentioned previously, a lot of this data includes people who are consensually working in sex work. A lot of the anti-trafficking groups specifically conflate the two so that it seems a lot like it's a bigger problem than it is. Not to say it's not, but so if you're looking to get data, what you really need to do is build up communities, relationship of trust with communities, so that people feel comfortable coming forward, because we can't study something that can't be studied. If it's actually just pushed further and further down, we can't do any of that kind of study. Really, it comes down to building relationships, I think.
If I could really super quickly, I'm not sure if you guys have watched Pornhub. It's a #2 documentary right now, Money Shot. It's a very interesting dissection, including Canadian Parliament, on the difference between those who are exploited and those who are sex workers. I'm just curious if you could, in 10 seconds, your thoughts on it. Ms. Sinclair.
Oh, yes. Yes. So that documentary, I think, is really important, because it does give the actual the mic to workers. It doesn't. There were trafficking groups that were involved in it that spoke, anti-trafficking groups, right? Pardon me. But it really exposed just how biased all of their data is, and so it's really important to listen to performers.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move online, and Emanuela Lombropoulos. Emanuela, I'm turning the floor over to you. 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to apologize in advance in case I say anything that's ignorant. I am trying to learn, and I'm here to listen. So, and I'm obviously hearing from different witnesses who, witnesses here today have kind of pointed to as not necessarily the people to be listening to, and that's where we're getting our information from. So I apologize in advance for that. But I wanted to kind of take something that was asked earlier, or something that was suggested earlier by a previous witness, and see what the thoughts are of the witnesses that are currently before us. And so one of our witnesses, Crystal Snyder, had mentioned that we should be implementing or putting into place the UN non-punishment principle for people who are being trafficked or who are being controlled by a trafficker. And there was some pushback from another witness within that same panel saying that women who are trafficked are not prosecuted. So I'm wondering if you guys can clarify that and tell me what your thoughts are on that as well.
I can go first if that's okay, Kate. Yeah. I really appreciated when Crystal Snyder corrected the misinformation you were being fed by the two people who actually don't have experience in the industry, but who just have analysis based on their ideology. And what Crystal was suggesting is most definitely the case. For one, many sex workers and family members in communities are arrested with trafficking laws because of the ways that family members or community members are sort of labeled as traffickers or assumed to be traffickers. I think some of the racist undertones or the ways that communities get racialized in this process are a really good indicator of how that process works. We often see cases of like Black men trafficking white women, or like this idea of foreign illegals, trafficking white women. And so a lot of those ideas get translated through law enforcement. But what the committee members earlier were talking to is the ways that the sex work laws under PCPA work, and the sex work laws under PCPA absolutely criminalize all people in the sex industry, including sex workers. Sex workers are, one of the members of this committee asked for a copy of the clause. It's in the criminal law. It's under PCPA, so you have access to it. It's in your own laws. But those criminal laws most definitely criminalize sex workers in the industry. There's a clause that suggests that sex workers cannot be prosecuted for the sale of their own sexual services, but sex work and sex workers are criminalized at all times in every context. Just because sex workers can't be prosecuted doesn't mean sex workers are not operating and living in a context of criminality. And that's the way that sex workers organize their work, and that will determine whether or not sex workers will go report to police. So everything about sex work is illegal, and sex workers are at all times criminalized. And so when you have human trafficking laws, plus sex work laws, plus the additional immigration provisions, plus the bylaws, plus the loitering, etc., the context of criminalization for people working in the sex industry is unbearable, and most definitely not a trust-creating one.
I totally hear that. Ms. Sinclair, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about specifically law enforcement and anti-trafficking kind of training programs, especially that go on, that keep these definitions going, that keep the conflation going. So in Winnipeg, I know we have the Joyce Smith Foundation that is well-funded and educates our police on trafficking, and that group also conflates sex work and trafficking. So when police are educated themselves, they are educated to see sex workers as both trafficked and trafficker. So they are absolutely charged under these laws. Another group, Not in My City, which trains the RCMP as well as a bunch of Alberta police services, I did their training program for fun to see what they were saying, and they say that studies show human trafficking increases when the sex trade industry thrives. This means human trafficking and exploitation will continue as long as there is a demand for commercial sex work. Their goal is to end sex workers. I want to be clear about this. It's not just to end a commercial sex industry. This is talking about pushing workers underground, and it doesn't matter the cost kind of thing. I'd like to really outline that that's the training that our law enforcement is receiving.
Okay, thank you very much. In a way, I agreed a little bit with one of the things that a previous witness had said, in the sense that demand obviously is what makes the supply need grow, right? So there's a bigger need for supply, and that may make traffickers push or try to recruit more people and try to push more people in that direction. If it's not through law enforcement, what are some other ways that we can educate people, and at what age should that education begin in order to make sure that they're aware of what a trafficker might look like, how to protect themselves from being put into that trade?
I can start. I don't know what a trafficker looks like. I don't know if you know what a trafficker looks like. I think it's a ridiculous notion to assume that we ever could know what a trafficker looks like when all of you are using definitions of trafficking that aren't actually the same. And I will just go back to the idea that nobody's saying not to use law enforcement in any way whatsoever. There's just certain laws at your disposal, law enforcement's disposal, that are actually causing harm to people in the sex industry, like the sex work laws. Not just people in the sex industry, but to all people who sell or trade sex in general, but the sex work laws, the loitering laws, the regulations in the IRPR. So it's a question of removing those laws and then simultaneously.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jen. We're now going to mooch over Riel. I have lost all sense of my mouth today, so we're going to move over to Riel for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Sinclair, Ms. Clayman, thank you for being with us. Protecting sex workers and trafficking are important topics. One of the main issues is that we're not all talking about the same thing. There is a distinction to make, as you mentioned, between sex workers and sex trafficking. I think that's important. Perhaps I could ask you both to come back to this matter and clarify as simply as possible the difference between sex workers and victims of human trafficking.
Madame Sinclair.
Ms. Sinclair, if you could start.
Okay, so in general, we can start with that sex workers are operating consensually. There can be a number of different factors that influence that consent, like I was talking about with the story I presented with the Indigenous sex worker, that there are conditions that make people have to make that choice. Sometimes other groups will consider that trafficking, but in this case, la traduction, no.
Interpretation again?
Do we need to take a pause?
Okay, if we could, I'm just going to speak on English and seeing if the translation is working once again. Is the translation working? And Dominique and Riel, can you hear me? La différence is pour
The problem is with the
Lettement.
microphone
The
of
microphone.
the witness.
Just listening to this, Kate, can you just keep on speaking just to ensure that your microphone is
See,
working?
look, I didn't even touch
but if you could take.
All right, can you hear me now? Excellent.
Just keep on speaking.
All right, so yeah, it's very important to understand that people make the choices for different reasons. Just because they're a choice that someone else.
It's the headset. Her earpiece is causing an issue. This is the interpreter here saying that it's the earpiece that is too close to the microphone that is causing a feedback, and so we can't work because it might blow up in our ears. Apologies.
That Ms. Sinclair is using is too close to this piece right here. Okay, so you understand that part? You got this? So perhaps if you take off your earpiece while you're speaking and just kind of set it to the side, that may work, and she's giving me a heads up. Okay, great. We're going to turn it back to you. I know you had started answering that question. Rial, are you good with her just going back to answering the question?
Arrêter mon temps.
Yes, and I imagine you stopped my time, so how much time do I have left?
32 seconds when I stopped it. So I will just kind of continue to watch this. With
OK,
the
donc il me reste 4 minutes et...
So I have about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay, thank you. So I will resume my question. So Ms. Sinclair, I'll repeat the question because I'm not sure what was heard, but coming back to the importance of making a distinction between sex workers and victims of sex trafficking, because how they are treated is going to be different. And people involved in human trafficking should be penalized, whereas a sex worker would not be. So I just want to understand the distinction that you make. We'll start with you, Ms. Sinclair, if you can clarify in about a minute the distinction that you make between the two.
Okay, real fast. So the distinction between the two, again, generally, folks in sex work are choosing to be there. It's a consensual occupation. Again, the reasons that people come to sex work might be varied. It might not be the choices that everyone would make, but we have to remember that these are choices that people need to make to survive under the conditions that we have given them in Canada. And the distinction between sex work and trafficking would be folks who didn't choose to be there. But in emphasizing that not choosing to be there doesn't include making survival choices.
If we could just suspend for a second, please.